Hello YouTube vintage stereo collectors and Yamaha appreciators. Whatever I say on this take is what's going to stick. Anyway, here we are. Yamaha CR-66 Mach 2. It's back together. The lid's on, the feet are back on. It's together, it's recapped. There's about 80 some capacitors changed in this one. And a lot of them, there are two brands of caps I noticed in this. The majority Elna, but then some Matsushita, which are really great caps. But every Matsushita cap was leaking electrolyte underneath it. And it wasn't glue, it was borax electrolyte. Which was, it's easy enough to clean up, but the lead on the positive side of the can was severely corroded on each one. Yet it still played. Amazing, huh? Now it's completely recapped and it's more like it was when it was new. And so I'm going to do kind of a review about this unit, some of the great features. And you know what? Once in a while, you come across something, an amp like the Trio TW61 I recently did, that just does everything well, which is kind of cool. This one does everything well. I opened up the tuner with that little mod.
Don't do it at the scene.
Now I'm getting stations all over the place in stereo. Some of the great features on this, the record out, separate record out and input selector. And somebody might be thinking, what is that for? Well, it's like this. Back in the day, late 70s, when you would have bought one of these, you'd buy an album and you'd listen to it once, twice, maybe 3 times on your turntable, and you'd make a tape. And sometimes I would say, oh, I've listened to that enough, I'm going to make a tape for my car. And so I would have it on tuner, I'd be listening to the tuner, but the record out would be on phono and go into my deck recording. That was what it was for, and that was a great feature. Doesn't mean that much now, but it did back then. Another great feature, 2 headphone jacks. You rarely see that. Not a big deal, probably hardly ever used. But kind of a neat feature. All the controls on this thing did not have a lot of hours on it. Everything's tight, it didn't crackle, even, like before I cleaned and lubed the controls. Everything, the balance control ring, both channels are at the same level. It's got some, well, how can I put it? The whole philosophy behind the build on this one was, it's a 20 watt receiver, roughly. And you think, well, that's not a lot of power. And this is like a big case, too. It is a big unit, but it was the refinement in the electronics in this are quite amazing. So you have, why build 100 watts that doesn't sound that great, or 50 watts that clips, when you can have a clean 20 watts. And I've listened to these, and I've owned them before, and this one, and you can push them very hard, and that 20 watts stays clean right to the end, right up to 9 or 10 on the control, which is kind of neat. And it also has kind of a, to describe the sound, of course, it depends on the source, depends on the speakers, but through a standard set of monitors, I have some Behringer monitors here and some Energy C5s downstairs. It has a clean sound, slightly warm, very refined with texture. It has a certain texture that brings out music. This is not an amp to pump your subwoofer with or whatever. It's not meant that way. That's why these are very popular. Living in this town as long as I have, and when I was with the phone company, I used to go to people's houses, and there are a lot of musicians in a certain area of town around Center in the Square. I'd go to their place and they'd have records and CDs and a Yamaha with a dual turntable, and usually Riga speakers. There's something that a lot of these people were either with the symphony orchestra or different bands around town, It was just a combination that musicians liked because it had a musical sound, a detailed, uncolored sound. Anyway, that's what I want to say about it. This now is almost 50 years old. And you know what? It's got another 50 in it. Who makes products like that anymore? It just amazes me. And it makes sense. Like when you're in it working on it, oh, this section of the board is the tuner. This section of the board is where the phono preamp is. And it's all discrete. So even the phono preamp is transistor. The only place it has ICs is in the tuner. So this was the beginning. The next generation on the tuners and receivers would say DC, NFD, PLL, pilot, cancel, something. They had a system basically that you wouldn't get any of the 19 kilohertz through the system. And if you look at the tuner, this is the beginning of that design. There's very few IF cans. There's only 3 different slugs to turn. So there's a multiplexer chip and a chip in the IF section. And they're ones that you can still get. It just has a great working tuner. I'm looking forward to running some records through this and having some fun with it. But I want to say, like, as far as reviews go, stuff that comes across my bench, this is like a 9.5 out of 10. That's all I can say. Why don't I give it the extra 0.5? Because it's so hard to lift it and move it around. It's a very heavy unit. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening.